So I've been playing this game called Dune Crawl lately, and honestly, it's one of those experiences that just catches you completely off guard. When I first saw it on Steam, I thought, okay, giant crabs with cannons in a desert world, that's either going to be brilliantly weird or just plain weird. Turns out, it's brilliantly weird in all the right ways. The premise is absolutely wild. You're basically sailing across this vast desert wasteland, but instead of a ship, you're riding on top of a massive crab. And I don't mean like a slightly large crab, I mean a building-sized crustacean that you've strapped cannons to. It's called a Dune Crawler, and it becomes your home, your vehicle, and your weapon all rolled into one scuttling package. The game drops you into this post-apocalyptic desert setting where you're part of these people called the Polloi, and you're fighting against these jar-headed invaders called vassals, who serve something called the ceramicist. The lore is delightfully strange, and the more you play, the more you realize how much thought went into this bizarre world. What really got me hooked was how the game handles cooperative play. You can play solo, and that's totally viable because you get this ghostly companion to help you out, but the game really shines when you've got friends with you. Up to 4 players can crew your giant crab together, and this is where things get chaotic in the best possible way. Someone needs to steer the crab, someone else is manning the cannons, another person might be repairing damage, and suddenly you're all screaming at each other because a massive enemy crawler is bearing down on you, and the left leg is about to break off. It supports both local and online co-op, which is increasingly rare these days, and I really appreciate that they included both options. The core gameplay loop is this beautiful mix of exploration, combat, and upgrading. You're navigating your crab across this huge open-world desert, and dotted throughout are these oasis islands that you can visit. Each island usually has something interesting going on, whether it's quests from the locals, secret dungeons to explore, or just piles of loot to collect. The open-world aspect feels genuinely open, too. You're not being funneled down corridors or following a strict path. You see an island in the distance, you can just point your crab toward it and go. There's this real sense of freedom that reminds me of older adventure games, where exploration feels rewarding rather than like you're ticking boxes off a checklist. Combat in this game operates on 2 completely different levels, and both are equally satisfying. First, you've got the naval combat, except it's desert naval combat with giant crabs instead of ships. When you're engaging enemy crawlers or these huge bosses, you're managing your crab like a naval vessel. You need to load the cannons, aim them properly, and fire at the right moments. But your crab can also take damage. The legs can get destroyed, your hull can be breached, and you need crew members actively repairing things while you're under fire. It creates this frantic energy where everyone has a job to do, and if someone drops the ball, you're all going down together. The game even lets you launch yourself out of cannons to board enemy vessels, which never stops being ridiculously fun. Then there's the on-foot combat, which is more traditional action-adventure gameplay, but still incredibly satisfying. You've got swords, spears, bombs, and all sorts of hand weapons. The combat has this nice weight to it. It's not overly complex, but it feels good to land hits and dodge attacks. What I really love is how the game encourages you to use the environment. You can pick up bomb flowers and throw them at enemies, knock down beehives to unleash swarms, or even grab spider eggs and use them as weapons. It makes every fight feel a bit more dynamic because you're not just relying on your sword, you're looking around for anything you can use to give yourself an advantage. The variety of creatures you can ride is another layer that keeps things interesting. Your giant crab is your main transport, but you can also find and ride other massive bugs. There are these multi-saddle beetles that your whole crew can ride together, zippy little nymphs that are perfect for solo exploration, heavily armored scorpions for when you need to smash through things, and these ball bugs that are exactly what they sound like. Each one handles differently and has its own uses, so you're constantly switching between them depending on what you need to do. The upgrade system is where the game really lets you customize your experience. For your character, you collect masks, tunics, and talismans that give you new abilities and stat boosts. Finding a new mask that lets you dash, or a talisman that increases your damage output, genuinely changes how you approach combat. Then there are weapons, and some of these are wonderfully creative. There's a weapon called the bazooka, which is as amazing as it sounds, and an acid harpoon that melts through enemies. But the real fun is upgrading your crab. You can add spike armor to the legs so you can ram into things, install guided torpedoes for better ranged attacks, upgrade your cannons, improve your speed. And if none of that appeals to you, you can just give your crab a fancy new hat or paint job, which honestly might be the most important upgrade of all. Visually, Dune Crawl has this really distinctive art style. It's got a hand-drawn, almost storybook quality to it, but with this gritty desert aesthetic layered on top. The character designs are delightfully weird. The jar-headed vassals look unsettling in this perfect way, and the Poloi people you're helping have this scrappy, resourceful vibe to them. The desert itself is more varied than you'd expect. Sure, there's sand everywhere, but the oasis islands each have their own personality. Some are lush and green, others are rocky and barren, and a few have these ancient ruins that hint at whatever civilization was here before everything went to hell. The lighting is particularly nice, with these beautiful sunsets that cast long shadows across the dunes, and the way storms roll in across the desert is genuinely atmospheric. The dungeons, scattered throughout the world, deserve special mention. These are more traditional dungeon crawling experiences where you're fighting through enemies, solving environmental puzzles, and hunting for treasure. They're well designed too, with multiple paths, secret rooms, and challenging boss fights at the end. Some of them get pretty devious with their layouts, and you'll find yourself having to really think about how to proceed rather than just charging in and hoping for the best. The loot you get from dungeons is usually worth the effort too, with rare weapons and upgrades that you can't find anywhere else. What strikes me about Dune Crawl is how well it balances accessibility with depth. On the surface, it's a game about riding a giant crab and shooting cannons, which is immediately fun and easy to grasp. But underneath, there's this intricate web of systems with the upgrading, the different creature mounts, the dungeon exploration, the quest lines. You can engage with as much or as little of that as you want. If you just want to sail around the desert with friends and blow stuff up, you can do that and have a great time. If you want to hunt down every secret, max out your crab, and complete every quest, there's plenty to sink your teeth into. The game does have this wonderfully weird sense of humor running through it. The writing is often genuinely funny without being obnoxious about it. The characters you meet have personality, the quest descriptions are entertaining to read, and there are these little touches everywhere that show the developers were having fun making this. Your crab makes these adorable little clicking sounds. Enemies will sometimes say ridiculous things when they spot you, and the names of items and locations often got a genuine laugh out of me. Performance-wise, the game runs pretty smoothly from what I've experienced. There are occasional hiccups when there's a lot happening on screen, particularly during big battles with multiple crawlers involved, but nothing that really breaks the experience. The load times are reasonable, and I haven't encountered any game-breaking bugs, which is always nice to report. One thing that really enhances the experience is playing with a consistent group. The game is designed in a way where you naturally start to specialize. Maybe one person becomes the designated helmsman, who's great at navigating and positioning the crab. Another person might be your sharpshooter, who never misses with the cannons. Someone else is your boarding specialist, who always volunteers to launch themselves at enemy crawlers. When you've got that rhythm going with people you know, it creates these emergent moments that you can't really script. I've had sessions where we've limped back to an island with one functioning leg and barely any health, somehow surviving an encounter we had no business winning, and everyone's yelling and laughing, and it's just pure chaotic joy. The sound design deserves credit too. The cannons have this satisfying boom to them. The scritching of your crab's legs as it moves across sand is oddly soothing, and the combat sounds pack enough punch that fights feel impactful. The music shifts between this adventurous exploration theme when you're just cruising around and more intense battle music when things get heated. It's not going to win awards for best soundtrack, but it fits the game perfectly and never gets annoying, which is honestly all you can ask for. I think what makes Dune Crawl special is that it fully commits to its absurd premise. It doesn't wink at the camera or apologize for being weird. It just says, here's a world where people ride giant crabs across deserts and fight jar-headed invaders. And then it builds a genuinely solid action-adventure game around that concept. It reminds me of those PS2 era games where developers would just throw wild ideas at the wall and see what stuck, except with modern design sensibilities and polish. If I had to point out any weaknesses, I'd say the game maybe doesn't do the best job explaining all its systems up front. You'll probably spend the first hour or so just figuring out what everything does and how all the mechanics fit together. Once you get over that learning curve, it clicks, but it can be a bit overwhelming initially. Also, while the open world is large and filled with content, there are occasionally stretches where you're just crossing empty desert between points of interest. It's not a huge issue because your crab moves at a decent pace, but some more random encounters or events during travel might have kept those moments more engaging. But honestly, those are minor quibbles with what is otherwise a remarkably fun and unique game. Dune Crawl is one of those games that proves there's still room for weird, creative ideas in gaming. It takes a completely bonkers concept and actually makes it work through solid gameplay, thoughtful design, and a clear love for the world it's created. Whether you're playing solo or with a full crew, whether you're methodically exploring every corner of the map or just mainlining the story, there's something here that's genuinely special. It's not trying to be the biggest game or the most realistic game or the most competitive game. It's just trying to let you ride a giant crab with cannons across a desert wasteland, and it succeeds at that in ways I didn't expect. If that sounds even remotely appealing to you, I'd say give it a shot. Just be prepared for your friends to blame you when the crab's leg falls off during a crucial battle.